Okay, I would like to welcome all committee members and guests to the September 6, 2023 Public Hearing Committee meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised, so please ensure your phones are on silent. For those attending virtually, please mute yourself when not speaking. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself. For staff in attendance, please use the Microsoft Teams raise hand feature icon to be called upon and remove it after you're finished speaking. With that, I'll call the public hearing committee meeting to order and perform roll call. Everybody is in attendance and Councillor Huffman is here virtually. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Michelli, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All in favor? Carried. With that, we can officially open public meetings held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and county policies. Please be advised that to preserve your right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, you're required to make comments or provide written submission prior to the passage of a bylaw. These matters are are here today to allow the public to provide initial comments on presented planning matters. So with that, item 4.1, 395 Queensway West, Mr. Sloan.
Thank you and good afternoon. Through the chair, we have an exciting development proposal in Simcoe to introduce today, and I'm going to turn it over to Fabian, who will walk us through the development overview. Fabian. One is working. Okay, yeah, mine. You can take that.
Okay, thank you. That's much better. Through you, Madam Chair. So we have received an application for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment located at 395 Queensway West in the urban area of Simcoe. Next slide. Okay, so a little surrounding the current official plan designation and zoning of the property. So the property is currently designated commercial, hazard land, as well as provincially significant wetland in the official plan, and it is zoned service commercial, hazard land, and PSW in the zoning bylaw. So a little bit about the site itself. So the total size is just under 3 hectares. It's located in the urban area of Simcoe. The site consists of a truck and trailer facility, as well as the Brant Haldeman Norfolk Canadian Mental Health Association office building there. Surrounding land uses to the north consists of the dog park, as well as the provincially significant wetlands there to the north. To the east consists of commercial development, as well as to the west, and to the south consists of a 4-story retirement home and existing commercial development. In regards to the proposal, so the proposal in its entirety is for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the development of a mixture of commercial and residential uses. So the first component, or one of the components, is a 6-story mixed-use building on the southern portion of the subject lands, and that is to contain 114 one-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartment units. That also consists of just over 2,700 square meters of usable commercial space, as well as 166 underground parking spaces and 136 surface parking spaces for both visitor and commercial spaces. In regards to the other component, so the second component consists of low-rise residential development, which consists of the northern portion of the subject lands. So there are proposed 38 3-story townhomes with 6 2-story semi-detached buildings. And on the graphic there on the television, these 6 semi-detached buildings are the buildings located most north. And then all the other yellow buildings are essentially the townhomes, and the 6-story commercial building is the pink, the large pink building to the south. So as part of for the purpose of this application, it's being referred to as Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 is being known as the northern portion, and Part 2 is the southern portion, which consists of the apartment building. At a later date, the applicant would be applying for a severance to officially separate the two properties to consist of the northern and the southern portion. So the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment for the northern parcel is to change the zoning of the subject lands from service commercial with special provision 14.627 to urban residential type 4 with special provision 14.1039 to establish amended provisions for the following: maximum building height of 13 meters for the townhomes, as well as a minimum rear yard setback of 3 meters for both the townhouse and semi-detached dwellings. For the southern parcel, the zoning remains as service commercial with special provision 14.627 being amended as required. And they'll also be looking to establish zoning provisions for the following items, which includes building height, a building height of 30 meters or 6 stories for the southern parcel, as well as a reduction in the residential parking calculation from 1.5 parking spaces per unit to 1.25 parking spaces per unit. So at this time, no public comments have been received regarding this application. It was circulated amongst agencies for review, and at this time, it should be noted that staff, we didn't receive the development engineering comments in time. In terms of making it into this report through the internal processes for eScribe. But I believe Clerks has provided written comment to Council for convenience regarding the development engineering comments. It should also be noted that those comments would be reflected in the recommendation report. With that being said, staff can speak to the development engineering comments a little bit. So it's outlined that a traffic impact study has been submitted, but requires updates to reflect the surrounding land uses. Another item that should be mentioned is the archaeological study identified that there is contamination on the subject lands and that more studies and more remediation efforts are required, but it's staff's understanding that the agent and the owner are aware of this, and I would also ask that, if possible, the agent could speak further to this component as well. Staff have also identified that a holding provision should be placed on the subject lands to for essentially two components, to that the applicant obtain a record of site condition and registration of a site plan agreement to the satisfaction of the general manager of community development. So the record of site condition would be a document that they obtain from the ministry. At this point in time, that about concludes my presentations, and I welcome any and all questions from council and or members of the public.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from council? Go ahead. Oh, none? Was that a question? Oh, sorry. Give you a minute to review, or we can turn it over to the applicant or agent and then call for another round of questions then. Okay, let's do that. Do we have anyone registered to speak here today? Let me find my notes. We do. Scott, come on up. I'll just remind you, you have 5 minutes to speak, and you're going to hit that button on the right-hand side for the microphone.
And there's a presentation being brought up.
you want me to switch gears and have development engineering comment at this time on their, while you pull it up? Okay. Scott, I'll call you back up in a few and let them get it loaded. Thanks. Is there anyone from development engineering on the line? I think council would benefit from a full, or sorry, committee would benefit from a full walkthrough. We just had the report put on our desk, so.
Yes, I am present. Hello. Sorry, I'm just trying to get caught up here.
Thanks, Tim. If you could just walk us through the comments.
For just one moment. My computer doesn't seem to want to be cooperating with me at this moment. Okay, so for the official plan and zoning amendment, these are our general comments that, again, all plans, reports, and studies identified are to be submitted at time of site plan application. Recommendations from all reports must be incorporated into the design. Any required infrastructure to facilitate the development will be completed at the developer's expense. Water and wastewater allocation will not be issued as part of the OP in the zoning, but will be confirmed at time of agreement. Full development engineering comments will be provided at the time of site plan submission. After reviewing all reports and study, Norfolk County recognizes the current site contains levels of contamination that may impact future servicing. During the meeting on August 18th, 2023, between members of Development Ownership Group and their consulting engineer, Valley Limited, and Norfolk County staff, it was shared that the site does have a level of contamination, which is identified in the Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessment. Prior to site plan approval, development engineering will require the confirmation that the site is free of contaminants and has a clean record of site condition, and that no on-site contamination has or will migrate into the municipal right-of-way. Development engineering has engaged our internal consultant to review the environmental studies and may have further comments prior to the final recommendation of this planning application. Development engineering is aware that the entire proposal is within the wellhead protection area for Simcoe. It is a recommendation of development engineering that prior to the OPA ZBA approval, a report from the county's consultant for wellhead protection be received to ensure no effects from the current wells. Water and wastewater modeling is still in progress. Further comments may be necessary once the modeling is received. Development engineering currently does not support the servicing strategy submitted with this application, as the original concept is one large property with multiple services. However, in recent consultation, the developer and their consultant, Norfolk County, was made aware of the potential severances to match proposed zoning areas. The developer is reminded that the county policy that each property is only permitted one water and one sanitary service and cannot share services within another property. A detailed review of the water and sanitary servicing will be completed during the future site plan submissions to ensure compliance with current Norfolk County standards. This proposal includes a sanitary connection for both future parcels to a sanitary main on Hunt Street. It must be recognized that the current sanitary main on Hunt Street does not exist. It will be the developer's responsibility to design and receive approval from Norfolk County and install all necessary sanitary sewer extensions for this development at the developer's expense. The stormwater management report was reviewed only as a concept at this time. A detailed review of the stormwater management design will be completed during future site plan submissions. There was no water balance calculations provided at this time. It is the expectation of development engineering that the functional service report will be revised and resubmitted at the time of site plan submission to adequately address all SWIM criteria. Again, from the meeting on August 18th, 2023, between the members of Development Ownership Group and the consulting engineer and Norfolk County staff, it was expressed that there will be a future severance of the property identified in the concept plan to align with the proposed zoning between commercial and the R4 zone. As a result, it was communicated that the overall stormwater management strategy will now be shared between two separate property owners, as the entire system will remain privately owned and will have an outlet that is not owned by Norfolk County. The only comment at this time is that the future approval of the stormwater management plans will be dependent on the approval of the legal and adequate outlet by Long Point, and further that all easements must be in place prior to the final approval of any of or either of the future plans. Development engineering recommends that a hold be put in place until the swim area is fully constructed operational prior to building permit on either of the proposed sites. Any recommendations, upgrades from the traffic impact study required to facilitate this development will be the responsibility of the developer. During development engineering review of the TIS, it was recognized that the pre-development background traffic for this proposal did not account for the previously approved future 42-unit condo development along Hunt Street in the vicinity of this development. Development engineering will require the TIS to be revised to reflect the local development and further review any impacts the total additional traffic will have on the proposal and Hunt Street and the Hunt Street and Queensway intersection. And that is all for today.
Okay,
Any
thanks,
questions?
Tim. Any questions from committee with regards to those comments? Okay, do we get the PowerPoint up? All right, let's switch over. We'll bring Scott back up.
Great, Madam Mayor, Committee, thanks for having us in attendance today. I'm here to talk about the development at 395 to 411 Queensway. So it is important to know that currently it is multiple parcels at this time. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm Scott Palandre. I'm with G. Douglas Valley. I'm the project planner for this application. Next slide, please. Okay, 5 minutes, 5 points. So we'll delve into these points as we go through the presentation. Next slide. Okay, just to provide context, so the property is located on the west end of Simcoe, at the northeast corner of Hunt Street and Queensway West. Next slide. So as the staff report has pointed out, there is an official plan and a zoning bylaw amendment that have been submitted. The staff planner did a good job of covering the details, but there are changes of designation to the northern parcel from commercial to residential. Building height, there are applications of yard setbacks that we're seeking, minor reduction in parking, standardization of parking requirements for the commercial uses and additional commercial uses. Slide. So one of the big things is the variety of housing types and commercial space that'll be provided here. So there are, as it was pointed out, the purple units are the 1.5 semi-detached bungalow loft units. There'll be 6 of them. The green units are the 32 three-story townhouses with their associated parking. And then in the mixed, the 6-story building, there'll be a variety of studio, 1 and 2 bedroom dwelling units. And then also some almost 30,000 square feet of modern commercial space along the ground floor of the mid-rise building. Okay, so as we've talked about, this is an existing brownfield site. So there will be a remediation of that and a revitalization of the brownfield site. I'll come back to the questions about the contamination following the presentation and can answer any question that staff or the committee may have. But currently the existing land use is a truck and trailer business. There is some aging office space on the property. And then with the proposal, so we'll be looking at a variety of housing options as we discussed in the last slide, and then some modern commercial space along the Queensway. Next slide. Okay, so just to provide some context for the site layout. So the top image on the top left there would be along the Queensway. So as you can see, it's providing some very appealing streetscape along the highway with that commercial space along the bottom floor. There'll be that parking lot, and the underground parking will be located in behind the mid-rise building. There will be pedestrian access provided from both Hunt and the Queensway. And then we look at the image in the bottom corner. So we've taken into consideration the existing residential use to the north. So we've done some transition of massing and density as we head towards that existing residential land use. To try to provide that compatibility with the residential use. So you see in the bottom image those 1.5-story bungalow lofts that would be abutting the existing residential use. Okay, so we did talk about parking. I think it's important to just to reinforce. You can see our parking calculations here. Two of the big things to drive home. We're only minor deficient in the parking as the standard would require. The applications are only seeking a minor reduction in parking from 1.5 spaces to 1.25 spaces for the studio dwelling units only. It may be written differently in the bylaw, and we can discuss that with staff, but it is just important to note that it would be only for the studio apartments that the reduction in parking standards is being sought. Okay, so the environmental considerations, the property is abutting Patterson Creek to the north. So an environmental impact study has been completed. We've been working with the county, the consultant, as well as Long Point Region Conservation Authority for that study. The location of the stormwater management pond has been coordinated as development engineering has required that we take a look at that with Long Point. The EIS did recommend some restorative planting as a result of it. So there'll be a tree protection plan and a tree restoration plan that'll be included during the site plan process. The environmental site assessment and a historical environmental site assessment has been submitted. What's ongoing right now is an updated stage 1 or phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 site assessment. That's been done proactively by the developer, obviously dealing with an existing contamination. And it's important to note that contamination is mainly located along the southern parcel, and it's due to an old fuel pump that has since been removed. So that is the source of the contamination. There's not any ongoing contamination issues. So from a planning analysis, some of the big things, again, it's supported by provincial and local policy. This would be a high quality mixed residential commercial use for Norfolk County. It does encourage intensification with that variety of housing types, including the apartment dwellings. And with the site layout and the environmental considerations, we've mitigated any negative impacts on the surrounding lands. So with the application, we've submitted a list of supporting studies to go along with it. As identified, some are required to be updated, which will happen as we move through the development process into the site plan application process. Some of those studies would be required, including the detailed servicing, and then obviously, as indicated, the traffic impact study. Next slide. So just some next step and timelines. Looking from here, assuming land use approvals are received, we'd be looking to start to divide up the land with the severance application as we discussed the northern and southern parcels. We'd be looking to start submitting site plan applications as soon as we could, either later this year or early into the new year, and then move through the approvals process, condominium, and then we'd look to start construction on, like development engineering has required, the stormwater management facilities as it's shared, and then construction of the northern parcel first. Slide. I can answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Are there questions from committee? Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 6-story apartment unit that you're calling, is it eventually going to be a condo complex? You mentioned at the end of your presentation.
So the developer is looking at ownership styles and how they're going to format their ownership. They are exploring options of possibly doing a mix of both condo and apartments. They'll get into that as they go through their condominium development.
And when does your developer intend to put a shovel in the ground at that location?
The $1 million question. Ideally, it would be as soon as possible. If I think our timeline projected into 2025, we'd be looking to start construction.
Thank you.
Councillor Vanden Driesche.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Just a question of the contamination. You indicated it was like former gas tanks or things like that. Is that hard to mitigate to clean that up?
So the environmental site assessment that was submitted was a historical report that was initiated by the developers, knowing that there is commercial industrial use on the property in terms of the truck and trailer business. There were old fuel pumps on site. And that assessment has determined, where some of that contamination is localized. The fuel pumps have been removed since then, and now with the updated environmental site assessment, they're going through the full stage of the stage 1, stage 2, and then stage 3 would be whatever remediations required by the legislation. Pardon me? It'll depend on what remediation steps are required.
Councillor Duthie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Scott, thank you for being here today. I would just start by saying I appreciate this, your applicant, the proposal is before us. I think it's a good one, and it's nice to see this kind of development on the Queensway, so thank you. I do have a couple of questions, and I'll start with the one that you had to know I would bring up, which is parking. Can you maybe just give me some justification on the, as you say, minor parking reduction?
Yes, so I think the bylaw is worded in a way that would allow all reduction for all residential units on the southern parcel. The application is only seeking relief for the studio apartments. All the other 1 and 2 bedroom units would be required to adhere to the 1.5 space per, and then plus obviously visitor parking as well. So in relation to the relief being sought, it is just for the studio apartments. The justification there is given that it is, one, a minor departure from the standard required by the bylaw, and two, the idea being that these apartments or condominiums will be geared towards younger single individuals.
Perfect, thank you. The visitor parking, is it below ground or it's all above ground?
So I believe it's both. There will be most of the residential, the visitor parking, is above ground. The residents are in the underground parking.
Okay. Can I just ask, obviously, so the large building there on the southern parcel is currently where CMHA is housed. Are you able to talk about potential tenants or where they may relocate? Obviously, it's an important organization in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So the applicant has been working closely with CMHA about where that transition and how that could take place. Obviously, it would be a business deal between the two organizations, but they are certainly in talks and working together to hopefully relocate them.
Councillor Breton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on the environmental issue, they were gas pumps? Were they out on what is now the paved portion out there where that office, I think it's the mental health building offices?
So the exact location, I'm not exactly sure. I do know it is located sort of towards the southeast corner of the property, towards the front of the existing office buildings. That's where some of the contaminations were picked up in the initial site assessment, but the exact location, I'm not entirely sure where the gas pumps were.
Yeah, I think, if I remember right, that was the old Cronkite trucking yard. Am I correct on that? Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess looking at, like you mentioned earlier in your comments about you had a proposal for servicing, but it wasn't suitable. Is that because of the phasing of this project?
So originally, the original proposal, it was one development,
right?
And Norfolk County policy only permits one servicing laterals per development. So that was where we were proposing two, and it looked like one development, or would have been one development, and we were proposing multiple service laterals to the property. With the severance, now they would be two separate parcels, two separate site plan agreements. with one service to each parcel.
So I'm just trying to get clarification on that. So are you talking about, and you mentioned there's no sanitary on Hunt, but are you coming off of Hunt Street to service this or off the Queensway?
So yes, the intent would be to extend the sewer main up Hunt Street and bring both services off of Hunt Street, not the Queensway.
Okay. And any time frame on the phasing?
Phasing again, hopefully early 2025 for construction on the northern parcel.
The northern part. So it's based on sales, I assume.
Sales and also moving through the development approvals process and the required approvals are needed from the county.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, and Scott, we received the development engineering comments today, but just before we went through them. And are there any concerns there or surprises that you noticed when the employee was going through those, Mr.
So no, in speaking with our civil engineers, no, there's no concerns regarding those comments. We feel we can address all of them fairly easily.
Perfect, thank you.
Questions? Okay, I have one. So I get the direction that we're going in general with the parking reduction, certainly in the smaller housing types. There may be less cars, there may be no cars, but I think it was Councillor Duthie at another planning file, we discussed the same thing, and we're just not fully there yet in our community. So has there been any discussion with the developer and our staff on helping us fill gaps in our community through the transportation system, adding bus stops by the location, contributions in that nature?
Contributions in terms of?
Well, I suppose we'd take whatever we could get, but addressing the gap between having more than one large, dense planning file come forward that's asking for reductions in parking spaces because they're smaller units with less cars, but we're not fully, a walkable community yet. So we have Ride Norfolk. Maybe actually, Brandon, do we have a bus stop in that direction, in that location?
To the chair, it looks like this is between some existing stops that we have. I think we have one at Queen and one towards Cedar. So we would need to look at that with the developer and the developer proposal. And that's a very good item to look at, whether or not there's the potential for contribution towards a transit stop at this location.
And then I guess a takeaway for staff, bigger picture. So if we get a developer help us fund a new bus stop, which is great, it doesn't keep the viability of our transit system alive. So on a high level for staff, are we conscious and collecting in development charges and so on, things that can help support transit? If we're going to continuously hear about, less parking spaces and so on, I want to support that, but I'm going to need to make sure that we have other means of transportation for community members. So I don't necessarily need an answer today, and maybe there is an answer already, but that would be a concern of mine if we're going to continually hear about parking reductions. Do you want to comment or no? You kind of looked like you did.
To the chair, I guess very briefly, yes, having more dense but also mixed use developments is more transit supportive. And we are still in a bit of a transformation stage, and we do have new technology. We're doing on demand for transit, but they do go hand in hand along with other active transportation routes as well. So you flagged a very key item for looking at when we have these transformative development applications, because going from just a pure old commercial type development to a new mixed use where people are living and working there, it's a new format. So yes, definitely something to continue to look at and see about the contributions through development and towards hand in hand with our transit.
Sure. So I guess without putting you on the spot, Scott, I'm asking if you'll go back and have these conversations with the developer and continue to have conversations with our staff if this council is going to be continually faced with requests for reduced parking and so on. I can get on board with that if we're, ensuring that our community members are either incentivized to drop a car or have other means of transportation.
Madam Chair, yes, I can assure you we'll speak with the applicants about this through the site plan process.
Thanks. Councillor Duthie?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, I appreciate the content of that discussion because I think that is the direction that we need to be considering. But it just raised another question for me, Scott. Is there, in your build plan here, is there any intention of adding EV chargers to the parking lots, etc.?
So in terms of, I believe that would be covered under the building code, what would be required there. This is obviously a fairly high level schematic site plan at this point. So going through the detail and building code requirements would be taken into consideration.
It's a great point. And I guess, Scott, to your comments about site plan, it's not your comment, it's the system that irritates me, but council is constantly needing to approve or deny files without having any concept of what gets worked into site plan. And so while I can appreciate that that's a nuanced detail that would be put into site plan, it would be nice to hear a commitment or a solution or a suggestion when a planning file comes back to us. I think that would help me and incentivize council to it in general, not specifically just to hear, but in general.
Absolutely.
Thank you. My other question for you, sorry, are there any other hands before I go on? Okay, my other question to you is with concerns to the environmental assessment. So a large part of your presentation talks about the remediation of the soil. So is it safe to assume that this developer is going to be looking for council to endorse this site as a contaminated site moving forward?
Endorse it in terms of
Development charges
as a brownfield site? Yes, I think the intent is to explore that as a remediation of the brownfield. Yes.
So Columbus.
Yes, one last question. I know it might be premature, but what is the plan for on-location garbage pickup and recycling pickup? Is that going to be part of the developer's operation, or are you expecting the county to go in there and look after picking up waste?
Through Madam Chair, so as a condominium, or it would be done through private services and contracted through the condominiums themselves.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on the question you asked there about the brownfields, if it's in 2 phases, I think those pumps used to be on the I call it the south side, where the office building is now. My recollection is right. But do you own the house to the west? Is that house to the west of the office building part of this development?
Between there and the dental office or the veterinary clinic? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a single home.
Yes, that is part of the development application, yes.
So based on this, all those will be coming down or demolished or whatever?
So yes, so the parcel would be merged, and then we'd seek to sever it to the northern and southern parcels.
Okay, so if it's looked at as brownfield, both phases wouldn't be considered brownfield.
In terms of dividing the two?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how that process, because severing the property will allow for separate registrations of those record of site conditions on each parcel.
Right.
I can't speak to how, if it would be 1 or 2 or both.
Okay, thank you.
Any other hands, questions, comments? Okay, well, on a really high level, without digging into more details that have come from staff, I think it's another great opportunity to create mixed use and different housing options for community members, and it's a good fit by way of location and the commercial aspect. So thanks for bringing it forward, and hopefully some of the questions and comments and concerns from council members get picked up by staff and you and the developer, and we have a good development on our hands in the coming future. Thanks. All right, with that, I'll open it up to anyone in the room. Is there anyone? I don't believe we have anyone registered to speak. Is there anyone here in council chambers that wishes to speak to the report? And is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to the report? Okay, we'll go back to staff for a couple questions. Councillor Duthie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff. I noted in the presentation there's some talk about restorative planting of trees. One of the sort of things that came to mind as I started to think about that is obviously it does border the dog park, and to my knowledge that dog park is not fenced all the way around. I don't exactly remember where the fences are, but is there any consideration there that we're going to need deal with that if we're going to remove some of the trees. It sort of creates the buffer that effectively creates the fence.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's something for staff to consider going forward. Truthfully, I haven't spent much time at the dog park, so I'm unaware of the fencing, but that is something for staff to consider and bring back.
I have a Rottweiler puppy you can take to the park if you like. She's a pain in the butt. Yeah, I that has come up a few times before from constituents, is the fact that it's not fully fenced all the way around. So that, and I do think the trees tend to create a bit of a buffer that makes the fence. So if we're going to take some of those down, there's going to be more activity, more construction activity in the area. That might be a consideration as well. I think that was all.
Okay, final call. Committee members, members of the public, anyone online. Otherwise, I would ask if someone wishes to move the staff recommendation or propose an alternative. Moved by Councillor Vanendrieschie, second by Councillor Duthie. And Tracy, as receiving this as information, the new updated development engineering comments are included in that, correct? Okay. Councillor Huffman, did I miss you? Do you want to jump in at all, or are you just ready to vote?
Nope, I'm good, ready to vote.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right. With that, we are going to adjourn, and then we'll begin the special council meeting. So I'm looking for Councillor Huffman to move adjournment at 3:42 p.m., seconded by Councillor Micheli. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much.